am just going to lay out a little bit of what's happening today. We're tackling this big topic of money. Money is, in the way I see it at least, is just a form of information, and it's a means by which we communicate value with each other. But ironically, this rather simple exercise is fraught with massive amounts of friction in our world. It causes lots of cost, lots of pain in our economy. And it's largely because of this problem of trust. We don't trust each other, and so we rely on institutions and mechanisms and all sorts of things to do that, and that gets in the way. So today we're going to look at ways to actually reduce that friction. And there are two ways that we focus on this. And one is to deal with the institutions themselves and try to make greater efficiencies within them. That is largely the banking sector, so fintech as we know it, looking at ways to sort of create much more disintermediated, freer flowing information around the question of money inside banks. And then the other is to completely overwhelm and restructure the entire system altogether, which is where we come at things from blockchain and cryptocurrencies. So those two big themes will be competing today, talking about how we go about really essentially just removing a lot of this, frankly, unnecessary friction in this exercise of exchanging value in our economy. And technology is the solution, so here at CES, that's what we're going to explore. So I'm going to introduce to you, first of all, Siri Srinivas, who is coming up. Welcome, Sri. She's got an excellent panel to start off the day. You survived?
I did.
First test is to get over the step, that's it. And she is going to sort of take us through Fintech, that is looking largely, as I mentioned, at the banking side of things and all the wonderful ways in which banks are grappling with change with this technology. Take it away, Sri.
Thank you. Well, good morning. I survived that, and I'm surviving these heels, so this day will hopefully go well. My name is Siri Srinivas. I am an associate at Draper Associates. We're an early-stage investment firm based in the Bay Area. We're founded by Tim Draper, who you will hear from later today. We invest in technology companies across various verticals, and fintech is a principal interest for us. Prior to Draper Associates, I've served time as an engineer at JP Morgan and as a journalist at The Guardian. So I've sort of been both a believer and a skeptic. Every time I do a panel on fintech, I kind of chuckle because we tend to talk today, even in Silicon Valley, about fintech as if it's one industry. But going back into a little bit back in technology, fintech meant different things to different people. In the 60s, it meant ATM machines. In the 80s, it was E-Trades, and in the 90s, it was PayPal. It's since evolved what the cutting edge of financial technology is in every decade, and there are plenty of debates about what the cutting edge of financial technology is. So I want to kind of set the stage and say, fintech spans, as many of you will know, everything from lending and investing to consumer finance. And for the purposes of the discussion today, we will be talking mostly about consumer finance. With that, I'd like to set the stage and say, we hope with this panel to discuss what the future of financial technology is, and more importantly, who will be building it. I'd like to introduce my panelists, if they're all mic'd up and ready. To start with, Himi Khan is the VP of Product at Clinc. We have Tim Hong, who is the Chief Product Officer and Head of Growth at Moneyline. Good morning. Roi Tavor is the co-founder and CEO of Nummo. And finally, Maeve Duska is the Senior VP of Marketing and Strategic Development at USA Technologies. Well, welcome. I was told by someone that we need to wake up the room, and this is my favorite thing to do before a panel, just so we know whom we're offending today. How many of you work in financial services? Okay. And how many of you work in fintech? If you said financial services, don't raise your hand now. That was a trick question. All right. In 20 years' time, how many of you think that the principal banking service you use will have originated on Wall Street? And by that I mean as a traditional financial services firm. This is one guy. Do you work for Goldman Sachs, sir? Just kidding. Just kidding. I love Goldman Sachs. And how many of you think that the principal banking service you use in 20 years will have originated in Silicon Valley? And I don't mean geographically, but I mean it was principally a technology company. What about the rest of you? Do you think it'll be a mix? Who thinks it'll be a mix? There we go. And plenty of people here don't have any opinions. What about you guys? Do you have any? What do you think we will be using in 20 years?
I mean, I think it'll depend on who you are, but I don't think the landscape's going to change too drastically, but I think the way you're going to be accessing the digital interaction layers, I think there's going to be a lot of innovation there. But foundationally, I don't think it's going to look that different over time.
We promised to offend people, so let's answer in like
Banks
one
are going
line.
away. And,
Banks will go away.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's a trick question, frankly, because if you look at the stack, and if you look at this tech stack that's being built, it's hard to even know geographically or from an industry standpoint. You know, already there's a tech bank partnership model that's being put into place that is working pretty well. Do I think in the long run that gets changed as people get more and more vertically integrated? Perhaps. But at the end of the day, what you're using from a tech or Silicon Valley standpoint is already backed by Wall Street at some level.
Mm-hmm. Maeve?
Yeah, so I think there's going to be a sort of coalescence of the two. I think the larger banks will probably learn from the agility of the smaller companies that are coming in and meeting consumer needs, and they will have to learn to adapt and change, and so I think they will do that. So I think that there'll continue to be both parts of the business model that are happening with lots of change as they both kind of come to the middle.
So much diplomacy. Roy, I actually won't let you answer because you know when you go on Nummo's website, there's a video that starts with "Fire the banks," so you won't get an opportunity to be diplomatic. Now, but you came from traditional financial services yourselves. What insight drove you to want to fire the banks and go all?
Sure. I think when we talk about financial services in the future, and I come from a very traditional financial services industry, it's all about the values. So technology itself is just the means, but in the future is going to be more and more relevant to communicate what are the values that your institution actually stands behind. And just maybe also to answer your previous question, what we believe is we're going to see a shift much more into marketplaces where the individual product is going to become less relevant and choices and access in those different marketplaces when it comes to financial services will become more relevant.
Mm-hmm. So Tim, Moneyline was started in 2013, which feels like a long while ago. What was the gap in the market that you were looking to serve at that point in time, and how has that changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we wanted to change the relationship people have with their financial institutions. We found that, you know, in the classic kind of startup mode, we started with the biggest pain point, and that was credit. Credit, at the end of the day, especially after 2008, had been constrained significantly, especially for consumers. And we saw an opportunity in terms of a value exchange, in terms of getting additional data that could help folks lower their rates, get access to credit, verify things like income and cash flow and ability to pay much more effectively, and kind of have really been focused on starting with financial health as a baseline and then being able to expand from that. And now we have 3 million members that use us for banking, investing, saving money, credit scores, and earning rewards throughout all of their financial lives.
Mm-hmm. Himi, you work with Clinc, which is building a set of voice-based applications for a bunch of retail operations. Now, how does AI, or specifically conversational AI, change the way people transact?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really a board-level conversation now at banks, particularly the top 6 banks in the U.S. And then really what's happening is that the interaction.
For people who don't know, can you explain quickly what Clinc does?
Oh, sure. So we provide a conversational platform that allows you to engage with your mobile banking app or your bank services or a new bank or any service actually via voice or chat. So it's pretty agnostic to whether you speak to it or you chat with it. We're in 2 of the top 5 money center banks in the US, same for Europe and several asset managers globally. And so we're really deploying the first enterprise conversational systems at scale using deep neural networks and leveraging AI. And most recently we launched 6 million users at Işbank in Turkey, which is the largest AI deployment, conversational AI deployment on the planet. So really what we're focused on is the bet that boards are making, boards of banks, is that really the conversational paradigm, the interaction paradigm is going to change from digital interactions where you're kind of looking at a mobile app and clicking and using your finger or whatever to really speaking to it in a voice format. And so that's really what we do. And so we focus on the enterprise. We focus in the larger side of the market, but we focus on financial services. And then to your question regarding how things are, we see things evolving, we think that already today, 2019, you have several banks that have roadmapped in conversational AI. So you'll see those services, you'll start experiencing them. If you're a Bank of America user, you'll already see that happening today, and we'll see more of that happening in 2020 and beyond. And so it's a really exciting time, and the way you're going to be engaging with your financial applications is going to completely change in the next 24 months, depending on how fast the IT teams work.
I love that we're talking about conversational AI and my name is Siri, but I'm just sorry, I was just laughing about that in my head. Maeve, same question for you. USA Technologies has been around for 3 decades now. What is the gap in the market that prompted the start of your business, and how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, absolutely. So USA Technologies specializes in taking machines that typically aren't connected machines, and there are billions of them out there. So think about vending machines, commercial washers and dryers, parking meters. These aren't super sexy markets necessarily, but they are ubiquitous. And they have not been connected previously. So when the company was first developed, it was with the purpose of getting the machines online, initially specifically for payments purposes. Everything had been moving to cashless. It was credit and debit then. Now it's mobile wallets, biometrics, all of these other technologies that are coming out. But that payments portion of it really became the enabler for lots of other things that we're now doing in the space. So once you get the machine connected, you can accept cashless payments in markets that were traditionally cash only, sort of the last bastion of cash only markets. And now we can do things like loyalty programs, contextual advertising, provide data that allows for customized experiences for consumers on behalf of our customers. And then also, on the other side of the value chain, allow our customers to run a more efficient business because they have access to all of this information in real time. So it has definitely morphed as time has moved on, but it really started with that connected machine and the payments application.
Mm-hmm. Interesting you say it was probably not an interesting market when it started, and right now it's all the rage. We'll talk about this more towards the end of this session. But for all of you, and the rest of you are working, Tim and Roy are working on companies or products that touch the end user or the end customer more directly. For both of you, who were your first customers and why did they choose you?
I'll start.
Yeah.
Because we only officially launched 3 months ago, so I have that in memory, who my first user is. So we target, and I think that's very interesting, predominantly to female, between 35 and 55, typically with young children, and really at the 99% level. So not high net worth individuals, not the affluent, really people who struggle with their financial health come to us. And while there may be alternatives in the market, I think they come to us because we have an approach when it comes to our relationship with our customers that is based on total honesty, something that is not seen very much. I mean, we have one user commenting, you guys are like mint. just honest. So I like that very much.
Is Mint in the room right now?
I don't know. I don't know, but I think that's important. And the demographics is roughly 80% is female.
Understood. Thank you. And same question for you, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we looked at it, we saw that a lot of the services that high net worth individuals were receiving were ones that folks kind of everywhere were not getting access to. So that could be financial advice, it could be low cost loans, it could be ways to invest without fees or have checking accounts without fees. So that's kind of like one dimension. We saw this real, if you think about the last 40 years and the lack of real income growth and kind of really wealth building in general for, let's say, the bottom 90th percentile, really we saw that there was an opportunity there to provide access to them. I think the other dimension that a lot of folks forget is that people change over time, and in particular in financial services, there's a need not to just to know your kind of target or your demographic, but how that changes over time. We think of these as inflection points. No one just kind of wakes up and is like, I want to do financial services and open up accounts, things like that. And so we think of that kind of like time series of intent. And you may not even know the intent, right? You may not be like Google searching or anything like that, where we can use data to understand these inflection points. It could be something as simple as having a kid. It could be something like, managing an unexpected expense like a car repair.
You mentioned you have about 3 million members. Before they found you, who were they using? Who was offering them services?
I mean, overwhelmingly, no one was, right? I mean, you would get folks that, like the number one kind of, if you could call it competition, were the big banks, right? Mm-hmm. And if you think about the relationship there, it was certainly things like I'm getting charged $7 a month for my checking account, right? And I'm getting fees on my ATMs, right? And what we realize is that there's just a better way to work with the customer in different business models, really.
Right, got it. Himi, you mostly sell to large enterprises. Mm-hmm. Now, when you walk into a VC office and you tell us we're selling to, I shouldn't pick on Goldman Sachs, but well, Goldman Sachs has a great technology division, so let's not pick on them. But any other large enterprise, sure. The first response we get is they're slow. They are resistant to change. Mm-hmm. They don't adapt, and that's why they're so big. They're way too big to really innovate. What would you say have been the bottlenecks with selling to large enterprises?
Yeah, I think. On the large banks, this goes to your what's your non-diplomatic answer, right? Like basically the large banks want to, on that buy versus build spectrum, they want to build it for the most part. And so 2 bottlenecks. One is we're not ready, we want to be fast followers. The second is we want to build it ourselves. So we have to convince them that the partnership model works, particularly because we've already invested so much time in it. So I think that those are the 2 major bottlenecks. I think culturally, there is shifting, and I talked about the boardroom shifts. I think there's a big focus on digital now. All the banks have these massive digital transformation initiatives. How the velocity of those initiatives is questionable by bank and by culture, right? But for the most part, each bank has an innovation team now, at least, and that's made up of tons of people, depending on the size of the bank. So there are people that are focused on it. Typically, most banks on the technology side, on the digital side, are focused on their 12 to 24-month roadmap. So everyone's kind of heads down on that. So you do need an innovation team that's actually focused on maintaining relationships with us, which everyone knows really well. And so to the extent that banks have that, and that goes to like the top 18 banks, and beyond that, it becomes murky because there's a reliance on the Fiservs of the world, the FIS Globals of the world, the NCRs of the world in terms of who's responsible for leadership in terms of innovation. Mm-hmm. And so things will be certainly more of a laggard there. But for us, it's really, we know what the problem is. You guys know what the problem is, and the numbers are already showing up. The Bank of America, I think the Erica MAU numbers are almost 3 million, 4 million a month now, right? So there's active usage happening on voice and chat via app. So it's just a matter of time.
And who are your biggest customers?
So I can't disclose the customers, but they're two of the top 6 banks. One's based on the West Coast, one's based in the Midwest, and then in Europe we have a couple of banks in the UK and France. And then the ones that I can disclose that are public, S&P Global is a customer, USAA, which is a top customer service bank. They've just been leaders in crushing kind of the space and partnering up. We're their conversational platform. And then
what do the best enterprise customers do well when engaging with the startup?
Yeah, they basically, obviously there's the talent question. They assign, really good people to really charge with these initiatives. They also open up piloting processes where we can access their active usage base with some of the new tech. So I think that's really important. They do that well. And there's just a senior level interest in doing it because as you go, getting really detailed, like as you go, if you look at the hierarchy of banks, it has to come from the top, right? There is stuff in the middle, but like the guys in the middle are really focused on getting, the business as usual stuff done. So it's really the senior level folks have to be bought in that, digital is super important and it's a competitive differentiator and it's no joke. So.
Tim, so again, going back to 3 million accounts and Goldman Sachs, somehow that's on my mind. A lot of the big banks are now buying up smaller startups that started out in the fashion that you did to get the customers that they previously did not have. Talking about, I was thinking about Marcus, which has about 1.5 million accounts, which is about half of what you have. So you're at that position where you have someone with very deep pockets stealing your customers and where you were serving customers who were previously unserved. How do you think about growth then? How is growth at this point different from getting your first 100,000 users?
Yeah, I mean, throughout our history, we've been really driven by word of mouth. We still are from a new acquisition standpoint, still primarily and dominated by organic acquisition. That continues to be kind of how we build our community, and we do view it as a community. We view it as the member being at the center, and of course, how the community can help with their goals instead of, let's say, by a financial product view of the world, right? And so I think what we've seen is that our members, when we make them happy and delighted, and we do a lot of measurement of things like NPS scores and even questions like how disappointed would you be if we disappeared, those kind of questions, and understanding how folks respond to those, that drives word of mouth, that drives acquisition, that drives obviously lifetime value because folks stay with the membership. So ultimately we view it as kind of a product-centric way of looking at it rather than like a competition-centric way of looking at it.
A lot of the larger enterprises have very diplomatic answers to this question, but why is it that each of your companies, I'll skip you Maeve for now, but was started outside of a bank and not within a larger traditional financial services firm? How are you looking at customers and users and experiences differently? And we'll be brief because we need to wrap up quickly, but what is the one thing that you think you're doing differently that legacy financial services firms have not done? We start with you, Roi.
Yeah, I'll start, and I'll try not to be too controversial.
Controversial.
I was very fortunate that I was able to work with, C-suite across different banks. And the reality is that while there are excellent people on the mid-level in those financial institutions who want to drive change, who want to drive innovation, at the very top, there's disconnects between what we should do and the incentive structure. And innovating and changing requires courage, it requires capital, it may have an effect short-term on share price, and at least that's what I experienced on the very top. The commitment to really change is not as prevalent as in a smaller outfit, such all of us are in except you. Yeah.
Tim, do you want to take that? Same question.
For me?
Yes. Yeah. What are you doing differently, and how do you see your customers differently?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few ways. I mean, we actually have a saying, it's a kind of a product philosophy, we call it WWBND, and it just simply says, what would a bank not do? And that's what we want to do. We want to change the relationship with the customer. It's a question we ask ourselves every day. Not because it's, being a bank is inherently bad, but like we just view ourselves as having a different relationship with our customers than a bank, right? What we want to enable is, again, not financial product centric, but user centric. We will help our customers with their physical fitness, as an example. If we think that kind of activity or feature or product will help our customers achieve their dreams. And when we view it that way, I think it becomes very simple because it lets you go outside what maybe a financial institution would normally do. And I think part of that's cultural. Part of that is certainly protection of, or we don't have, let's say, a huge revenue stream from overdraft fees that somehow we're tied to because of quarterly earnings estimates and things like that. We're free to say we're happy with the subscription model. We're happy with a model that says that folks get a flat, for our premium members, a flat monthly fee, and they can have anything they want, including more rewards than the financial institution. So we're willing to have that kind of incentive structure and business model with customers. And I think that's been the key innovation on our side, is really around the business model more so than, let's say, anything else.
And Himi, I know that your founder is a professor of computer science.
Mm-hmm.
So why academia versus what makes academia or that environment conducive to building?
Yeah, because for us it allows us so we can leverage so much of the learnings in the academic space from a lab's perspective. And so we have more than 15 PhDs working on solving these very difficult problems at a very fast pace. And so being able to leverage that community is really important for productizing things, because the whole bottleneck in terms of the pipeline for new conversational tech has been being able to productize it in a way that works well, and it can be deployed on-prem or it could be deployed on the cloud. And just on the prior question of how banks are changing, they're really, a year and a half ago it was more like, is a mobile app working well? Fine. But now I think most of the product management teams at banks are starting to think about, okay, we need to do credit scoring, we need to do the whole financial journey, we need to do the things that some of the newer fintechs are doing. And so that's gone up quite a bit, and then we need to do it conversationally, I think, is the other piece. And so this notion of a digital assistant is taking a new role in the experience, where you don't need to have 50 screens, right? You can just have the digital assistant. The digital assistant can serve up any type of customized experience for you. If it's I want to know the weather, or if I save $200 a month, what does my net equity position look like in a year? And can I pay for that vacation in Hawaii based on that savings rate? So those types of questions, given a good clean API, well-specified APIs on the back end, we can get all that done really quickly within a matter of weeks. Whereas before, it would be this gargantuan task. So,
what would you say to someone who's a very traditional, skeptical person like me, who'd say that the customers that most consumer finance applications or banks even service don't quite care about that level of insights?
Well, I mean, even if you look at mobile penetration of digital customers, you think everyone has a mobile app, right, at any one of these banks, but typically it's like 50 to 60%. So there's 40% of the market that doesn't even use the mobile app. So they're going to there's a long tail, and they'll take some time. But that other piece, that 60% that's actually using the mobile app, they're hitting the app, if not daily, but maybe 3 to 4 times a week or more or less, but it's around that range. And so those are the guys that are really driving a lot of the adoption. So.
Mm-hmm. On that note, I think we have a couple of minutes for some questions. Does anyone, I don't know if we're doing questions and if we have a mic, but if you have a question, please raise your hand, and I hope you'll make it controversial because our panelists are very diplomatic. You, sir, do you want to?
Yeah, my name's Dwayne Jacobson. I'm with BlockSafe. My question, and I've been in the
I love it. I love it. That's a good question. You have to speak up.
Talking about ownership of data.
His question is, why are you not talking about ownership of data? Roy, do you want to take that since you
Yeah,
like
sure.
it so much?
I mean, I think that's a very important question. You know, on Nummo, we believe that if you really want to improve your financial health, you need to consolidate all of your financial assets and liabilities in one place. That's the basic. Without that, you cannot start improving. And this is what we have done at my previous jobs for the very, very wealthy. And the data question is so important, and that's how you communicate. So at Nummo, we tell our clients very clearly we don't sell the data because we see a lot. We are able to consolidate from over 19,000 financial institutions, including fintechs such as Betterment and Wealthfront, but you need to communicate what you're going to do with the data. And the good thing is, I think because we are, you know, with the European spirit, we take data very, very seriously. And that's a key point. So always speak about what are you doing with the data, how safe is the data, and so forth. We were actually featured on Amazon about how we handle security, specifically when it comes to your personal identifiable data.
Yeah, for us, I mean, we deploy on-premise for banks, so banks don't want us to have data, and we don't want the data. I think there was, you know, a move for a lot of fintechs about 4 years ago to pivot into, you know, they're like, oh wow, we have all this data, we should become kind of a data company. And that happened, I think, in the PFM space with some players, and they kind of repositioned themselves. But for us, you know, we're just the interaction layer. We can have the data, but we don't make it like an obstacle, an additional obstacle. So since we're on-prem, we can, and we sit in the bank's system, and behind the firewall, we're all good.
Mm-hmm. Did you say you're in the blockchain space, sir? I promised myself I wouldn't say the B word, but you made me say it. We do it enough every day. I promise you I work for Draper Associates. Anyone else? There's someone there. Do you?
Your observation, your vision, what looks like the next neobank in 5 or 10 years? What will be the target market for neobank?
Tim, do you want to take that?
Did you hear the question? What will be in 5, 10 years the target model of the neobank?
What is the future vision for a new bank?
Sure. I mean, I think, you know, what we find really resonates is a subscription model, right? An all-you-can-eat subscription model. It aligns the interests of the customer with us in the sense that we want to, our number one, if you think about those kind of models, the number one kind of key metric is then retention and customer satisfaction, right? Of course, we offer both free and paid tiers, but we find that a lot of folks are very used to that. And you know, from a financial planning standpoint, our premium tiers are very easy to plan for because, you know, they're not, let's say, $35 overdraft fees when you're most vulnerable, right? And so I think we focus a lot on the business models and making sure that they align the incentives that we have with the customer. It means that, as an example, we don't have to and don't want to sell data. Because at the end of the day, we're about building the relationship with the customer. That's our personal view of the market and the relationship, but you know, I think that's what can transform the relationship you have with a bank.
Yeah, I would just say it's, you know, in our view, it's an integrated financial app that includes, you know, both savings, checking, trading, retirement, pretty much combining the worlds of wealth management and your traditional retail banking functionality and all the kind of bells and whistles with it via conversational interface, so you can talk to it or type into it. And so that's really what it comes down to. And it's a single screen from an interaction perspective. It's a single screen with an assistant. And that's where we think things are going in about 3 to 5 years, and that's what people are planning for.
Okay, on that note, I'm going to end this panel, but one last question. You get to answer in only one word. Future Bank, Silicon Valley, Wall Street. We'll start with you, Himi.
Sorry, what was that?
One word. Future Bank, Silicon Valley / Wall Street. Choose one. What will your future bank have been started in? One word.
Awesome.
I gave you two options.
Okay.
Well, one phrase.
It's going to be an integrated bank.
You do not qualify. How about you, Tim?
I pick one? Is
Yes, you pick one. Nothing else. You do not get to qualify, nothing. You'll have to live with it. Live with your choice. Silicon Street.
Can I use an attribute? Engaging?
Goodness, no. Beep.
These are the boxes we try to get out of, you know?
Beep. Maeve, you get to choose.
What are the 3 words?
Well, Silicon Valley or Wall Street? Where is your future bank coming from? You get to choose one.
Silicon Valley.
Well done.
Yep.
And Roy?
For me personally,
Yes.
or in general?
I don't know why that would differ, but
No, there's a big difference. But for me personally, it's Silicon Valley.
all right. I agree. And on that note, thank you so much. This is a great discussion.
Thank you.
Maeve will stay on with me,
Yep.
but
Thank you.
thank you all.